The shopping cart rolled past Tessa Harper with surprising speed, its wheels clattering against the parking lot asphalt as it picked up momentum on the slight incline, heading directly toward a minivan full of kids. She'd only let go for a second to grab her ringing phone, but that second was all it took. Before she could even shout a warning, a man in a faded blue work shirt sprinted from 3 cars over and threw himself in front of the runaway cart, catching it with both hands just inches from the vehicle's sliding door. Tessa's heart hammered as she rushed toward him, her designer heels clicking rapidly against the pavement. The man straightened up, breathing hard, his muscular forearms still gripping the cart's handle. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with sandy brown hair that looked like it needed a trim and a jawline dusted with stubble. His jeans were worn but clean, and there was a small tear near the pocket of his work shirt that had been carefully mended. "I am so sorry," Tessa said, finally reaching him. I just looked away for 1 second and it was gone. The man turned to face her, and she noticed his eyes were a warm hazel color. He gave her a tired but genuine smile. "No harm done. These parking lots can be tricky with the slopes." He glanced at the minivan, where several children were completely oblivious to what had almost happened, absorbed in their tablets. "Just glad I caught it in time." "Thank you," Tessa said, taking the cart from him. Their fingers brushed briefly during the exchange, and she felt an unexpected jolt of awareness. "Really? That could have been bad." "Jake Garrison," he said, extending his hand. "Tessa Harper." She shook his hand, noting the calluses on his palm. These were working hands, hands that did real labor. It was refreshingly different from the soft, manicured hands of the executives she dealt with daily. "Daddy," a small voice called out, and a little girl around 6 or 7 came running up, her dark pigtails bouncing. She wore purple leggings and a sparkly unicorn shirt. "Dad, they have the cereal I like on sale." Jake's entire face transformed when he looked at his daughter, softening with unmistakable love. "That's great, Pumpkin. Go grab a box, okay? Just one." The little girl nodded enthusiastically and darted back toward the store entrance. "Your daughter is adorable," Tessa said. "That's Mia. She's 7 going on 17. Jake's voice held both pride and affection. "And she's the reason I'm always triple-checking shopping carts. Kids have no fear." Tessa laughed, surprising herself. She hadn't genuinely laughed in weeks, maybe months. Her life had become an endless stream of board meetings, profit projections, and strategic planning sessions. As CEO of Harper Technologies, a software development company her father had founded, she rarely had moments of unscripted human connection anymore. "Well, thanks again," she said, suddenly feeling awkward. What did you say to someone who just saved you from a potential lawsuit and insurance nightmare? Someone who made your pulse quicken with just a smile? "Anytime," Jake said. "Have a good day, Tessa Harper." The way he said her name, with that slight rumble in his voice, made her stomach do an unexpected flip. She watched him walk back toward the store, his gait confident despite his obviously worn-out work boots. Then she shook her head, loaded her groceries into her Tesla, and drove back to her downtown penthouse, trying to forget about hazel eyes and gentle smiles. She failed completely. 3 days later, Tessa found herself doing something she never did, shopping at the same grocery store in the middle of the week. She told herself it was because they had good produce. She told herself it was convenient, even though it was 20 minutes from her office and there were at least 5 other stores closer. She absolutely did not tell herself she was hoping to see Jake Garrison again. But there he was, in the cereal aisle, with Mia sitting in the cart seat, pointing at various boxes and providing what sounded like detailed reviews of each one. "The flakes are too plain, Daddy, but the chocolate ones have too much sugar and make my tummy hurt. Remember." "I remember, sweetie," Jake said patiently. "What about the honey ones?" "Those are okay," Mia said thoughtfully, like a tiny food critic, "but not as good as the cinnamon squares." "The cinnamon squares aren't on sale," Jake said gently. Tessa saw something flash across Mia's face, a mature understanding that seemed too old for 7 years. "The honey ones are good," the little girl said firmly. "I like those best." Jake smiled and ruffled her hair. "Honey ones it is." Tessa felt like she was intruding on a private moment, but before she could quietly retreat, Mia spotted her. "Daddy, that's the pretty lady." Jake turned, and his eyes widened with recognition. "Tessa, hi." "Hi," she said, feeling uncharacteristically flustered. "I guess we shop at the same store." "Best prices in the area," Jake said, and there was no shame in his voice, just a statement of fact. "This is officially Mia. Mia, say hello properly." "Hello, Miss Tessa," Mia said with an exaggerated politeness that was absolutely charming. "Thank you for letting my daddy save your cart," Tessa laughed. "Thank you for having such a heroic dad." Mia nodded seriously. "He's the best dad in the whole world. He makes me breakfast every day before school, and he helps me with my math homework even though he says word problems make his brain hurt." "Mia," Jake said, but he was smiling. His cheeks had colored slightly. "It's true," Mia insisted. Tessa found herself completely enchanted. "What grade are you in, Mia?" "Second grade. I like reading the best. We have a contest to see who can read the most books this year, and I'm already at 15. 15 books. That's amazing. I want to be a veterinarian when I grow up," Mia continued, warming to her subject. "So I have to read lots of books about animals. Did you know that octopuses have 3 hearts?" "I did not know that," Tessa said, genuinely delighted. Jake watched their interaction with something warm in his eyes. "Okay, marine biologist, we need to finish shopping. I've got to get to work." "You work nights?" Tessa asked before she could stop herself. "Evening shift at the warehouse, 4 to midnight." He said it matter-of-factly. "My neighbor Mrs. Chen watches Mia. She's great." Tessa did quick mental math. That meant he was probably doing morning kid duty, somehow sleeping and then working 8-hour shifts. "That sounds like a tough schedule," Jake shrugged. "You do what you have to do. The pay is decent and the benefits are good. That's what matters." There was no self-pity in his voice, just quiet determination. Tessa felt a wave of respect wash over her. She dealt with executives who complained about their 6-figure salaries and corporate retreats to the Bahamas. Here was a man who worked hard labor night after night and found joy in his daughter's cereal preferences. "Well, I should let you get to it," Tessa said reluctantly. "Actually," Jake said, and then paused. He seemed to be debating with himself. "Mia has a soccer game on Saturday morning." "Just a local recreational league thing. But if you're free and wanted to, come watch. We could grab coffee after or something." Mia's eyes went wide with delight. "Yes, you should come. I'm number 7 and I play defense mostly, but sometimes midfield." Tessa's calendar flashed through her mind. She had a conference call with the Tokyo office that could probably be rescheduled. A charity brunch that her assistant could handle. Nothing that actually mattered, certainly nothing as appealing as watching a 7-year-old play soccer and spending more time with her father. "I'd love to," Tessa said. "Text me the details." They exchanged numbers, and as Tessa walked away, she heard Mia's excited whisper. "Daddy, she's so pretty. And she smells like flowers." Jake's response was too quiet to hear, but his tone sounded amused and maybe, just maybe, pleased. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather, sunny, but not too hot. Tessa found herself standing at her closet for 20 minutes, trying to figure out what one wore to a children's soccer game. Everything she owned was either business formal or evening wear. Finally, she settled on jeans, something she rarely wore, and a simple cashmere sweater. She caught herself checking her reflection 3 times before leaving, which was ridiculous. This wasn't a date. This was watching a child play soccer. Except when she arrived at the field and saw Jake standing on the sideline, his face lit up in a genuine smile that made her heart skip. It felt an awful lot like a date. "You came," he said, and there was real happiness in his voice. "I promised," Tessa said. "Where's the star player?" Jake pointed to the field where tiny kids in oversized jerseys were running in a cluster around a soccer ball. That's her, number 7. She's actually pretty good, great defensive instincts. They stood side by side watching the game. Well, Jake watched the game. Tessa found herself watching Jake, noticing the way his eyes followed Mia with constant awareness, how he called out encouragement without being overbearing, how he clapped enthusiastically every time any kid, not just his daughter, made a good play. "How long has she been playing?" Tessa asked. "This is her 2nd season. Her mom used to play in college." He said it casually, but Tessa heard something underneath the words. "Used to." Jake was quiet for a moment, his eyes still on the field. "She passed away 3 years ago, cancer. It was fast, aggressive. 6 months from diagnosis to gone." "I'm so sorry," Tessa said softly. Mia was only 4. She doesn't remember as much as I wish she did. Jake's jaw tightened, but she's got her mom's determination, her kindness, her terrible jokes. Tessa didn't know what to say. Her problems, her stress over quarterly earnings and product launches, suddenly seemed incredibly trivial. "You're doing an amazing job with her." "I'm trying," Jake said. "Some days are harder than others, but she's my world. Everything I do is for her." On the field, Mia successfully blocked an opposing player and cleared the ball. Jake cheered loudly, cupping his hands around his mouth. "That's my girl. Great hustle." Mia's face shone with pride, and she waved at her dad before running back into position. Then she saw Tessa, and her wave became even more enthusiastic. Tessa waved back, feeling something warm bloom in her chest. After the game, which Mia's team won 3-2, they went to a small diner a few blocks away. Mia was still buzzing with energy, reenacting various plays with the salt and pepper shakers, while Jake and Tessa sat across from each other in the worn vinyl booth. And then Emma passed to Sophia, and Sophia passed to me, and I kicked it all the way down the field. Mia demonstrated with the pepper shaker flying across the table. "Very impressive," Tessa said with genuine enthusiasm. "You were amazing out there." Mia beamed. "Did you play soccer when you were little?" "No, I was more into computers and math." "Math is hard," Mia said with great seriousness. "But Daddy says if I practice, I'll get better." "Your dad is right," Tessa said, glancing at Jake. "Practice is important." The waitress came by, and Jake ordered carefully, clearly keeping budget in mind. Mia got pancakes, Jake got coffee and toast, and before Tessa could think better of it, she ordered a full breakfast platter and extra sides, claiming she was starving, then made sure there was plenty to share. "So what do you do, Miss Tessa?" Mia asked, drowning her pancakes in syrup with the enthusiasm only a child could muster. "I run a company that makes software, computer programs that help businesses work better." "Are you rich?" Mia asked with childlike directness. "Mia," Jake said, mortified, but Tessa laughed. "It's okay." "Yes, I'm fortunate. I'm comfortable." "Wow," Mia said, clearly impressed. "Daddy works really hard too. He's at the warehouse and he lifts heavy things and his back hurts sometimes, but he says it's okay because we have good insurance, and one day he's going to get promoted to supervisor." Jake looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. "Mia, maybe let's not share every detail of my life." But Tessa found it endearing. There was no pretense here, no corporate politics or networking strategies, just honest conversation. "I think your dad sounds like a hard worker." "That's admirable." Over the next hour, Tessa learned that Jake had been an engineering student before his wife got sick. He dropped out to take care of her and Mia, then after she passed, he'd needed immediate income with benefits. The warehouse job had been supposed to be temporary, but 3 years had passed in a blur of surviving, of making sure Mia was okay, of putting one foot in front of the other. "I keep thinking I'll go back and finish my degree," Jake said, while Mia colored on the kids' menu the waitress had brought. "But by the time Mia's in bed and I'm done with work, I'm just exhausted. And the day shift pays less, which we can't afford right now." "What was your major?" Tessa asked. "Mechanical engineering. I was actually pretty good at it," he smiled a little wistfully. "Had a 3.7 GPA. But life had other plans." Tessa's mind was already working, thinking about the engineering positions at her company, the scholarship programs they funded, the ways she could help. But she stopped herself. This wasn't a charity case. This was a man who'd captured her attention, who made her feel things she hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. She didn't want to insult him with offers that might seem like pity. Maybe the timing will work out eventually, she said instead. Things have a way of falling into place. Jake met her eyes and something passed between them, an understanding, a connection. Yeah, he said quietly. Maybe they do. When they left the diner, Mia hugged Tessa goodbye with the unselfconscious affection of a child who'd decided she liked someone. Will you come to my next game? She asked hopefully. Tessa looked at Jake, who nodded slightly, and she felt her heart soar. I'd love to. Over the next few weeks, Tessa found herself integrating into Jake and Mia's life in ways that surprised her. She attended another soccer game, then a school art show where Mia had painted an enthusiastic, if anatomically questionable, horse. She started timing her grocery shopping to coincide with theirs. She learned that Jake made the best scrambled eggs, that Mia was terrified of thunderstorms, that their tiny apartment was always clean but needed repairs the landlord ignored. She also learned that Jake Garrison was one of the most genuine, decent men she'd ever met. He opened doors, not because he was performing chivalry, but because it was how he moved through the world. He listened when she talked about work stress, offering insights that were surprisingly astute. He never asked her for anything, never hinted that he needed help, maintaining his dignity even when she could see he was exhausted from double shifts. And somewhere along the way, Tessa realized she was falling for him. It happened in small moments. The way he laughed at Mia's terrible knock-knock jokes, the care he took in making sure everyone around him was comfortable, the quiet strength he demonstrated every single day. She dated successful men, attractive men, men who looked perfect on paper. None of them had made her feel the way Jake did. One evening, about a month after they'd met, Jake called her. It was late after 10, which was unusual. Hey, he said, and she could hear the worry in his voice. I know this is really last minute, but Mrs. Chen fell and sprained her ankle. She can't watch Mia tonight and I have to work. I've called everyone I can think of, but I'll be there in 20 minutes, Tessa said immediately. Are you sure? I know you have work tomorrow and this is a huge imposition. Jake, I'm sure, text me your address. 40 minutes later, after stopping to grab supplies, Tessa arrived at the small apartment complex on the east side of town. Jake answered the door in his work uniform, looking stressed but grateful. You're a lifesaver, he said, ushering her inside. The apartment was small but immaculately kept. There were pictures of Mia everywhere, her artwork on the fridge, library books stacked neatly on the coffee table. One wall had a large photo of a beautiful woman with dark hair and Mia's eyes, Jake's late wife. Tessa. Mia ran over in her pajamas, a purple nightgown with stars on it. You're here. I'm here, Tessa confirmed. Your dad has to go to work, so I'm going to hang out with you. Is that okay? More than okay, Mia said. Can we play games, and can you read me a story? Jake was grabbing his keys, his wallet, clearly trying to rush but not wanting to leave. She needs to be in bed by 8:30. She's had dinner, but she'll probably claim she needs a snack. She can have fruit or cheese, nothing sugary. There's juice boxes in the fridge. Emergency numbers are on the fridge. My number is already in my phone, Tessa reminded him gently. We'll be fine. Go to work. Jake hesitated, looking between Tessa and Mia, then he crouched down and pulled his daughter into a hug. Be good for Tessa, okay? I'm always good, Mia said matter-of-factly. True, Jake admitted. He straightened up and looked at Tessa. Thank you, really. I owe you. You don't owe me anything, Tessa said. Go, we're going to have fun. After Jake left, Tessa spent the next 2 hours playing board games, reading stories, and learning that 7-year-olds had apparently infinite energy. They played 3 rounds of a princess-themed game that made absolutely no logical sense, but was deeply important to Mia. They read 2 chapters of a book about a girl detective and her dog. They had a snack of apple slices with peanut butter, and Mia told her approximately 36 random facts about various animals. At 8:30, Tessa managed to get Mia into bed, though it took 3 more stories and 2 glasses of water and 1 urgent bathroom trip that Tessa suspected was somewhat strategic. Finally, Mia was tucked in, her room lit by a small nightlight shaped like a crescent moon. Tessa sat on the edge of the bed, and Mia looked up at her with sleepy eyes. "Tessa," she said quietly. "Yeah, sweetie. Do you like my daddy?" Tessa's breath caught. "Of course I like your daddy. He's a wonderful person." "No, I mean like him. The way princes and princesses like each other in stories." Tessa didn't know what to say. She couldn't lie to this perceptive little girl, but she also didn't want to promise anything uncertain. "Your dad is very special to me," she said carefully. Mia nodded, as if this confirmed something she'd already known. "I think he likes you too. He smiles more now, and he hums when he makes breakfast, which he didn't used to do." "Does it bother you?" Tessa asked gently, "that your dad and I are friends?" Mia thought about it with the seriousness of a child considering an important question. "My mommy is in heaven," she said finally. "Daddy told me she wants us to be happy. I think you make Daddy happy, and you're nice to me, so no, it doesn't bother me." Tessa felt tears prick her eyes. "You're a very smart girl, Mia." "I know," Mia said without arrogance, just certainty. "Good night, Tessa." "Good night, sweetheart." Tessa left the door cracked open and went back to the living room. She found herself looking at the photos, the evidence of a life built with love. The picture of Jake's wife showed a woman who looked kind, who had laugh lines around her eyes. Tessa didn't feel jealous. How could she be jealous of someone who'd clearly been so loved and who'd left such a beautiful legacy in Mia? She worked on her laptop for a few hours, catching up on emails, reviewing reports. At midnight, she heard Jake's key in the lock. He came in quietly, clearly expecting everyone to be asleep, and startled when he saw her on the couch. "Hey," he whispered. "How was she?" "Perfect," Tessa whispered back. "Out cold since 8:45. We had a great time." Jake sagged with relief and gratitude. He looked exhausted, his work shirt stained with sweat, his hair disheveled, but he still gave her that smile that made her stomach flutter. "You're amazing. Seriously." "I enjoyed it," Tessa said honestly. "Mia's great company." Jake moved to the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water, drinking it in long gulps. Tessa watched the line of his throat, the way his shoulders held tension from the long shift. Without thinking, she stood and walked over to him. "Rough night?" she asked. "Understaffed again. I basically did the work of 2 people." He set the glass down and turned to face her. They were standing close in the small kitchen, closer than they'd been before. "But it was better knowing Mia was safe and happy. Thanks to you." "Jake," Tessa said softly, "I need to tell you something." He looked at her, waiting, and she could see her own nervousness reflected in his eyes. They both knew something was building between them, had been building since that first day in the parking lot. "I like you," Tessa said. "Not just as a friend. I really like you. And I know our lives are very different and this might be complicated, but I had to be honest." Jake didn't say anything for a moment. Then he reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his rough fingers gentle against her skin. "I've been trying not to fall for you," he admitted. "You're successful and sophisticated and you drive a Tesla. I'm a warehouse worker who shops based on which store has the best coupons. We don't make sense." "We don't," Tessa agreed. "On paper." "But I can't stop thinking about you," Jake continued. "And when you're around, everything feels lighter, easier. Mia adores you, and he took a breath. "I haven't felt this way since my wife. I wasn't sure I'd ever feel this way again." "Is that okay?" Tessa asked, searching his face. "Is it okay to feel this way?" "Yeah," Jake said, his voice rough with emotion. "Yeah, it's okay, more than okay." He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away, but Tessa didn't want to pull away. She wanted him, had wanted this for weeks. When his lips met hers, it was gentle at first, tentative, a question. She answered by wrapping her arms around his neck and kissing him back with all the pent-up emotion she'd been holding in. Jake's arms came around her waist, pulling her closer, and the kiss deepened. He tasted like water and something uniquely him, and Tessa felt like she was falling and flying at the same time. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Jake rested his forehead against hers. "Wow," he said. "Yeah," Tessa agreed. "Wow." They stood there in the tiny kitchen, holding each other, and Tessa felt something settle in her chest. This was right. Against all logic, against all the reasonable objections, this was absolutely right. "So what now?" Jake asked quietly. "Now we figure it out," Tessa said. "Together." Figuring it out proved both easier and harder than Tessa expected. The easy part was being with Jake and Mia. When she was with them, everything made sense. Jake was attentive and affectionate in a way that made her feel cherished. He held her hand when they walked, kissed her forehead when she was stressed, listened to her talk about work challenges with genuine interest. Mia was thrilled to have Tessa around more, declaring her like a bonus person in their family. The hard part was the practical realities. Their schedules rarely aligned. Jake worked evenings and overnight shifts. Tessa had early morning meetings and often didn't leave her office until 7 or 8. They carved out time when they could, stolen hours and Sunday mornings, but it wasn't enough. Tessa wanted more. She wanted to wake up next to Jake, to have lazy breakfasts together, to be a real part of their lives. She also couldn't ignore the financial disparity. Jake insisted on paying for dates, even when it was clearly stretching his budget. He refused to let her help with groceries or contribute when Mia needed new cleats. His pride was admirable but frustrating. One evening, about 2 months into their relationship, things came to a head. Tessa had planned to take Jake and Mia to a nice restaurant for Mia's birthday. Nothing excessive, just a family-friendly place with good food and a fun atmosphere. When Jake saw which restaurant she'd chosen, his face went tight. "Tessa, that place is expensive." "It's Mia's birthday," Tessa said. "I want to treat you both." "I can't let you pay for my daughter's birthday dinner." "Why not? I want to do this." They were standing in Jake's apartment, speaking in low voices so Mia wouldn't hear in her bedroom where she was getting ready. Jake ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. "Because it's not your responsibility," he said. "She's my daughter, I provide for her." "I know that," Tessa said, trying to stay calm. "I'm not trying to take over or suggest you can't take care of her. I just want to do something nice." "It doesn't feel nice," Jake said, and there was pain in his voice. "It feels like charity, like you're the rich girlfriend swooping in to save the poor single dad." "That's not fair," Tessa said, hurt. "Is that really what you think, that I'm with you out of pity?" Jake sighed, the fight draining out of him. "No, I know that's not true. I can't be the guy who needs rescuing, Tessa. I've worked so hard to build a life for Mia, to provide for her on my own. When you want to pay for everything, it makes me feel like I'm failing." Tessa's anger faded as she understood his perspective. This was about more than money. It was about identity, about Jake's sense of self-worth as a father and a provider. She stepped closer and took his hands. "You're not failing," she said firmly. "You're one of the most successful people I know. Not because of money or status, but because of who you are. You're raising an incredible daughter. You work hard every single day. You're kind and honest, and you have your priorities exactly right. I don't want to rescue you, Jake. I want to share things with you. There's a difference." "I want to give you things," Jake said quietly. "Take you to nice places, buy you gifts, but I can't compete with your lifestyle." "I don't want you to compete with anything. I just want you. The man who catches runaway shopping carts and makes his daughter pancakes shaped like animals and kisses me like I'm precious. That's all I want." Jake pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I'm sorry. I know I'm being difficult. This is just hard for me. What if we find a compromise?" Tessa suggested, her voice muffled against his chest. "You pay for some things, I pay for some things. We take turns. And on special occasions, we let each other do something nice without overthinking it." "I can try that," Jake said, "but I'm probably going to still be weird about it sometimes." "I can live with that." They went to the restaurant, and it was wonderful. Mia was delighted with everything, especially the chocolate lava cake with a candle in it that the servers brought out while singing. Jake relaxed and laughed, and Tessa thought about how she'd never been happier than she was right then, watching the two people she loved most enjoy themselves. Because she did love them. She loved Mia's enthusiasm and sweetness, and she was absolutely, completely in love with Jake. She didn't say it that night. It felt too soon, too much. But she felt it with every fiber of her being. 3 weeks later, Jake met Tessa's parents. It had been inevitable but nerve-wracking for everyone involved. Richard and Margaret Harper were old money, country club members, people who summered in the Hamptons and wintered in Aspen. Tessa had spent her whole life slightly disappointing them by being more interested in code than cotillions. She took Jake to Sunday brunch at their estate, a sprawling property in the suburbs with a circular driveway and a fountain. Jake pulled up in his 15-year-old Honda Civic, and Tessa could see him take a deep breath before getting out. "You look great," she assured him. He was wearing khakis and a button-down shirt, probably his church clothes, and he looked nervous but handsome. "Your parents are going to hate me," Jake said. "They're going to love you," Tessa insisted, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. Her mother answered the door, elegant in a cream-colored pantsuit, her blonde hair perfectly styled. Her eyes took in Jake with one swift, assessing look. "Mother, this is Jake Garrison. Jake, my mother, Margaret Harper." "Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Harper," Jake said, shaking her hand firmly. "Come in," Margaret said with a polite but cool smile. "Richard is in the study." The brunch was exactly as awkward as Tessa had feared. Her father, a silver-haired man who'd built Harper Technologies from nothing, interrogated Jake about his work, his background, his education. To Jake's credit, he answered honestly without apologizing for his circumstances. "So you work in a warehouse," Richard said, making it sound like Jake had said he robbed banks for a living. "Yes, sir. Logistics and distribution for a medical supply company. I'm actually up for a supervisor position next quarter. And you have a daughter?" "Yes, sir. Mia, she's 7. "Single father," Margaret said, as if noting a particularly unpleasant diagnosis. "That must be challenging." "It has its moments," Jake said evenly. "But she's the best thing in my life." Tessa jumped in, desperate to steer the conversation. Jake was studying mechanical engineering before his wife got sick. He had a 3.7 GPA. "Was studying," Richard repeated, "and you plan to go back?" "When I can, yes," Jake said. "Right now, my priority is providing for my daughter and giving her a stable life." "How admirable," Margaret said in a tone that suggested she found it anything, but after brunch, when Jake had excused himself to use the restroom, Tessa's parents cornered her in the hallway. "Sweetheart, what are you doing?" her mother asked in a harsh whisper. "I'm dating someone I care about. What does it look like I'm doing?" "He's not appropriate for you," her father said bluntly. "You're a CEO. You need a partner who understands that world, who can attend functions and network and represent the company. Jake is smart and capable and kind. He's exactly appropriate for me." "He has a child," her mother hissed. "You'd be taking on someone else's daughter. That's a huge responsibility." "I know that, and I care about me very much." "Tessa, be reasonable," her father said. "This man is clearly after your money." Tessa felt white-hot anger flash through her. "How dare you? Jake has never asked me for a single thing. He's one of the most principled people I've ever met. If anything, he refuses to let me help when I want to." "That's just smart strategy," her mother said. "Playing hard to get, making you think he doesn't want your money." "You don't know him at all," Tessa said coldly. "And frankly, your opinions about my relationships aren't welcome." She walked away before they could respond, finding Jake waiting by the front door. One look at his face told her he'd heard at least some of the conversation. "Let's go," she said, taking his hand. They didn't speak until they were in her car, driving away from the estate. Then Jake let out a long breath. "Well, that went about as expected," he said. "I'm so sorry, they were horrible. They're protective of you, I get it. From their perspective, I probably do look like I'm taking advantage of you. You're not," Tessa said fiercely. And I don't care what they think. Tessa. Jake reached over and took her hand. I do care what they think, not because I think they're right, but because they're your parents. You have a relationship with them. A complicated one, sure, but it's there. I don't want to damage that. You're not damaging anything. They're being judgmental and classist and ridiculous. Maybe, but maybe they also have a point about me not being able to give you the lifestyle you're used to. Tessa pulled the car over abruptly, parking on a side street. She turned to face Jake directly. Listen to me very carefully. I don't care about lifestyle. I don't care about country clubs or status or any of that superficial nonsense. I care about you. I care about the way you love your daughter and the way you work hard and the way you make me laugh. I care about who you are, not what you have. I love you, Jake said suddenly, Tessa's breath caught. What? I love you, he repeated, his eyes intense. I've been afraid to say it because of all this. He gestured vaguely, encompassing their differences, her parents' disapproval, the complications. But I do. I love you, Tessa, and I need you to know that before we go any further. Because if we do this, if we really commit to this, it's going to be hard sometimes. People are going to judge us. We're going to have to fight for it. I know, Tessa said, tears streaming down her face. And I love you too, so much. I've loved you for weeks now. I was just scared to say it. Jake reached over and wiped her tears away with his thumbs, then kissed her softly. So we're doing this. We're all in. All in, Tessa confirmed. They sat there in the car, holding each other, and made a silent promise to face whatever came together. The months that followed tested that promise. Tessa's parents cut back on their involvement in her life, making their disapproval clear. Some of Tessa's society friends drifted away. Unable to understand why she'd chosen a warehouse worker over the eligible bachelors they kept trying to set her up with. There were awkward moments when Jake felt out of place at company events, and times when Tessa struggled to fit into Jake's working-class neighborhood gatherings, but they made it work. Tessa started working from home more often, adjusting her schedule so she could be there when Mia got home from school. Jake took on extra shifts to save money for things he wanted to contribute to, like when they took a weekend trip to the beach, and he insisted on paying for the hotel. They learned each other's rhythms and routines, made space for each other in their lives. Mia was the bridge that connected them, the pure and uncomplicated center of their relationship. She loved having Tessa around, loved that she had someone to help with homework and attend school events when Jake had to work. She never seemed confused by the arrangement, accepting Tessa's presence in their lives with the easy adaptability of childhood. 6 months into their relationship, Jake had an interview for the supervisor position. Tessa helped him prepare, running through potential questions, boosting his confidence. When he got the job, with its better pay and day shift hours, they celebrated with sparkling cider and a homemade cake that Mia helped bake. "This is huge," Tessa said, hugging him tight. "I'm so proud of you." "It's a start," Jake said. "I'm also going to enroll in one online class next semester. Just one, to see if I can handle it with work and Mia, but I want to finish my degree eventually." "You will," Tessa said with certainty. "You can do anything you set your mind to." That night, after Mia was asleep, they lay together on Jake's couch, Tessa curled into his side. The apartment was quiet, peaceful, and Tessa realized she felt more at home here in this small, worn space than she ever had in her luxury penthouse. "I've been thinking," Jake said quietly, "about the future, about what we're building here." "Yeah," Tessa said, her heart starting to beat faster. "Mia asked me the other day when you were going to move in with us, just casually, like she was asking when we were having dinner." Jake laughed softly. "But it made me think. We're together all the time anyway. You have clothes here, a toothbrush, your laptop is always on the kitchen table." "What if we made it official?" Tessa sat up so she could see his face. "Are you asking me to move in? I'm asking you to build a life with us, a real life, not just dating. This place is small and not fancy at all, but it's ours, or it could be. What do you think?" Tessa thought about her penthouse with its floor-to-ceiling windows and designer furniture. She thought about this apartment with its creaky floors and temperamental heating, but filled with love and laughter. It wasn't even a contest. "Yes," she said. "Absolutely yes." Jake's face lit up and he kissed her deeply. "You're sure? I know it's a downgrade from what you're used to." "It's an upgrade in every way that matters," Tessa said firmly. They told Mia the next morning over breakfast. She nearly knocked over her orange juice in her excitement. "Really? Tessa's going to live with us forever. If that's okay with you," Tessa said, though she already knew the answer. Mia launched herself at Tessa, hugging her tightly. "It's more than okay. It's the best thing ever. Can we decorate your room? Can we go shopping? Can we tell my teacher that I have a new mom?" Jake and Tessa exchanged glances at that last question. They'd been carefully avoiding labels, not wanting to rush things or presume, but Mia seemed to have made up her own mind. "Is that what you want?" Tessa asked gently. "For me to be like a mom to you." Mia pulled back and looked at her seriously. "My real mom is in heaven, but I think she'd be happy that you love me and Daddy, and I love you too. So yeah, I think you're like my bonus mom." "Bonus mom," Tessa repeated, her voice thick with emotion. "I like that title a lot." Moving in was a logistical challenge. Tessa had a penthouse full of expensive furniture and belongings. Jake's apartment was already packed with 3 people's worth of stuff in a 2-bedroom space. They spent weeks organizing, donating, figuring out what made sense to keep. "We should look for a bigger place," Tessa suggested one evening as they sat surrounded by boxes. "I can't afford anything bigger in a decent school district," Jake said, frustration in his voice. "Not on my salary, even with the raise." "What about on our combined salaries?" Tessa asked carefully. This was still a sensitive subject. Jake was quiet for a moment. "I want to contribute equally." "What if we contribute proportionally instead, based on what we each make? That way we're both paying our fair share relative to our income." Jake considered this. He'd been in therapy, working through his issues around money and masculinity, and the complicated feelings that came with dating someone who earned him significantly. His therapist had been helping him reframe how he thought about partnership and contribution. "Proportionally," he said slowly. "That could work. Let me do the math." They spent the next hour with a calculator and rental listings, figuring out what they could afford together. The answer was something significantly nicer than Jake's current apartment, though not as luxurious as Tessa's penthouse. A 3-bedroom house with a small yard, in a good school district, with space for Mia to play and Jake to have a home office for his online classes. "Are you sure?" Jake asked, looking at the listing Tessa had pulled up. "This is way more than I've ever spent on rent." "But way less than I'm spending now," Tessa pointed out. "And look, it has a workshop in the garage. You could set up an engineering space, work on projects." She saw the longing in his eyes as he looked at the photos. "Let's go see it," he said finally. The house was perfect. It had hardwood floors and large windows that let in lots of light. The yard was small but well-maintained, with enough space for a swing set. Mia ran from room to room, declaring each one better than the last. Jake stood in the garage workshop, looking around with wonder. "I could really do this," he said quietly. "Set up a proper workspace, maybe take on some freelance engineering projects eventually, build up a portfolio." "You absolutely could," Tessa said, wrapping her arms around him from behind. They signed the lease that week. Tessa put her penthouse on the market and was slightly amused when it sold in 3 days for above asking price. Jake worked extra hours to save up for new furniture, insisting on paying for at least the living room set himself. Mia helped pack, carefully wrapping her treasures in newspaper, chattering excitedly about her new room. Moving day was chaos. Jake's friends from the warehouse came to help, along with some of Mia's friends' parents from school. Tessa hired movers for her stuff, and the 2 worlds collided in a flurry of boxes and furniture and pizza for everyone afterward. Tessa's assistant showed up with lunch, took one look at the scene, and dove in to help organize the kitchen. By evening, They were exhausted but settled enough to sleep there. They ordered Chinese food and ate sitting on the floor of their new living room because the table wasn't set up yet. Mia fell asleep between them, worn out from excitement. "We did it," Jake said, looking around at the boxes and chaos that represented their new life together. "We did," Tessa agreed, leaning against his shoulder. "It's perfect." "It's a mess," Jake countered, but he was smiling. Perfectly messy. Living together brought new challenges and new joys. Tessa learned that Jake was meticulous about the garage workspace, but left his socks everywhere. Jake learned that Tessa worked best at 2 in the morning and would often be up late, coding or reviewing reports. Mia loved having both of them there, loved the morning routine where they all had breakfast together before school and work. They developed rhythms and traditions. Sunday morning pancakes, Thursday night movie marathons, Saturday morning soccer games followed by lunch at the diner. They fought sometimes about housework distribution and scheduling conflicts and how much to spend on Christmas presents. But they always worked through it, committed to finding solutions that honored both of them. Tessa's relationship with her parents remained strained. They'd met Mia once, briefly and awkwardly, at a restaurant. They'd been politely distant, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of their daughter playing stepmother to a warehouse worker's child. It hurt, but Tessa was learning to accept it. She couldn't control their prejudices, only her own choices. Jake's friends and neighbors, on the other hand, had welcomed Tessa warmly. She'd expected judgment or resentment, but instead found acceptance. Mrs. Chen, Jake's former neighbor who still babysat occasionally, had hugged Tessa and told her Jake deserved someone who made him happy. The guys from work teased Jake mercilessly about dating someone out of his league, but always included Tessa in gatherings. A year into living together, on the anniversary of the day they'd met, Jake took Tessa and Mia back to the grocery store parking lot where it had all started. "Why are we here, Daddy?" Mia asked, confused. "Because this is where I met Tessa," Jake said. "Right here, she had a runaway shopping cart and I caught it. And you've been catching me ever since," Tessa added softly. Jake got down on one knee right there in the parking lot, and Tessa's heart stopped. Mia's eyes went huge with understanding. "Tessa Harper," Jake said, pulling out a small box. "This past year and a half has been the best of my life since my wife passed. You've brought light and love and laughter into our home. You've been patient with me when I was difficult, supportive when I was struggling, and loving every single day. Mia adores you, and I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone. Will you marry me? Will you officially become part of our family?" "Yes," Tessa said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." The ring was simple and beautiful, a single diamond on a silver band. Jake stood and slipped it onto her finger, then kissed her while Mia cheered and jumped up and down. Several shoppers who'd stopped to watch applauded. "I love you so much," Tessa said against Jake's lips. "I love you too," Jake replied. "Both of us do, right, Mia?" "So much," Mia confirmed, joining in for a group hug. "Can I be a flower girl? Please, please, please." "You can be anything you want," Tessa promised. They got married 4 months later in a small ceremony at a local garden. Mia was indeed the flower girl, wearing a purple dress she'd picked out herself. Jake's friends from work were groomsmen. Tessa's assistant and a few close colleagues attended. Tessa's parents had been invited but declined, sending a perfunctory card and check that Tessa donated to a scholarship fund. The absence hurt, but Tessa refused to let it overshadow the day. Because as she walked down the aisle toward Jake, seeing the love and joy in his face, watching Mia scatter flower petals with theatrical enthusiasm, she knew she had everything she needed. Jake had written his own vows. "Tessa, you caught me completely by surprise. I wasn't looking for love, wasn't even sure I'd find it again. But you showed up and changed everything. You see me, really see me, not just as a warehouse worker or a single dad, but as a person with dreams and potential. You love my daughter like she's your own. You challenge me to be better, to want more, to believe I can achieve anything. I promise to support you, to be your partner in every way, to build a life with you that honors both of us. I will love you and choose you every single day for the rest of my life." Tessa was crying before he finished. Her own vows were shorter but no less heartfelt. "Jake, you taught me what really matters. You showed me that love isn't about status or money, but about character and kindness and showing up every day. You work harder than anyone I know, not for recognition, but because you're building a life for the people you love. I promise to stand beside you, to support your dreams, to be the best partner and stepmother I can be. I love you and Mia with everything I am, and I can't wait to spend forever with you both." When they kissed as husband and wife, Mia cheered the loudest. The reception was at the same diner where they'd gone after Mia's first soccer game. The owner had closed it for the afternoon, decorated it with simple flowers and string lights. They served comfort food and cake, and Mia gave a toast that was mostly about how she now had two parents again, and that was the best present ever. Jake danced with Tessa, holding her close, and whispered, "You're sure you don't regret the country club wedding?" "I regret nothing," Tessa said firmly. "This is perfect. We're perfect." "We really are," Jake agreed, sounding almost surprised. "I never thought I'd get this lucky twice." Married life suited them. Tessa officially adopted Mia 6 months after the wedding, a legal process that involved paperwork and a court date, and ended with all three of them crying happy tears. Mia started calling Tessa Mom, which made Tessa's heart swell every single time. Jake finished his online degree 2 years later, walking across the stage to receive his diploma while Tessa and Mia screamed their pride from the audience. He got a job as a junior engineer at a small firm, taking a small pay cut initially, but investing in his future. The warehouse supervisor job had been good, but engineering was his passion, and Tessa had encouraged him to chase it. "I've got us covered," she'd said when he worried about the income change. "Take the job, follow your dream." Within 3 years, Jake was promoted to senior engineer, then project manager. His salary grew, and with it, his confidence. He still had moments of insecurity about the wealth gap, but they were fewer and farther between. Therapy had helped. Time had helped. Building a partnership based on mutual respect and love had helped most of all. Tessa made changes at Harper Technologies, implementing better work-life balance policies, more generous benefits, scholarship programs for employees wanting to further their education. Her father had retired, leaving her fully in control, and she was steering the company in a direction that aligned with her values. Profits were good, but more importantly, employees were happier and more engaged. When Mia was 12, they sat her down for a serious conversation. "How would you feel about having a little brother or sister?" Tessa asked. Mia's eyes went wide. "Are you pregnant?" "Not yet," Tessa said with a laugh. "But we're thinking about it. You'd be a pretty big age gap, though. 12 years or so. How do you feel about that?" Mia thought about it with the maturity she'd developed over the years. "I think it would be cool. I could help take care of the baby, teach them stuff. Plus, you're both really good parents, so the baby would be lucky." "You're pretty great yourself, kiddo," Jake said, ruffling her hair. 10 months later, they welcomed a son. They named him Marcus James Garrison, and he had Tessa's dark hair and Jake's hazel eyes. Mia was obsessed with him, constantly wanting to hold him, help feed him, show him her favorite books even though he couldn't possibly understand them yet. 2 years after that, they had a daughter, Emily Rose. She came out screaming and didn't stop for weeks, colicky and demanding. Jake walked her at night while Tessa worked and vice versa. Mia, now 14, pitched in when she could, though she was busy with high school and soccer and a budding interest in veterinary science. The house got louder and more chaotic. There were toys everywhere, diapers and bottles, and the controlled chaos of raising small children while also parenting a teenager. But there was also so much love, so much laughter, so many moments of connection and joy. One evening, when Marcus was 3 and Emily was 1, Jake found Tessa sitting on the back porch, watching the kids play in the yard. Mia was pushing Marcus on the swing while Emily toddled around, picking dandelions. "You okay?" Jake asked, settling beside her. "More than okay," Tessa said. "I'm just thinking about that day in the parking lot, how I let go of a shopping cart and it led to all this." Jake put his arm around her. "Best runaway cart in history. You didn't even know me. You just jumped in to help." "That's who I was raised to be, help people when they need it." Jake smiled. "I had no idea I was catching my future wife." "Did you think I was pretty?" Tessa asked teasingly. "Be honest." "I thought you were gorgeous," Jake admitted. "Intimidatingly gorgeous, wearing those designer clothes, looking like you'd stepped out of a magazine." "I figured you were way out of my league." "Good thing I didn't care about leagues." "Good thing," Jake agreed. He kissed her temple. "You know what's wild? I'm actually happy, like genuinely, completely happy. I wasn't sure that would ever happen again after Sarah died." "She'd be glad," Tessa said softly. "That you found happiness again, that Mia has a full life." "I think so too," Jake said. "I'll always love Sarah. She gave me Mia and she was a huge part of my life. But I love you too, Tessa, not the same way but just as deeply. Is that okay?" "It's more than okay," Tessa assured him. "Love isn't finite. There's room for all of it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play as the sun set. Tessa thought about her parents, who'd eventually come around somewhat after Marcus was born. They'd never be close, would never fully approve of her choices, but they were at least civil now, showing up for holidays and sending birthday cards to the kids. She thought about her company, thriving under her leadership. She'd proven she could be a CEO and a mother, could have a successful career and a rich family life. It wasn't always easy, but it was always worth it. Mostly, she thought about Jake. About how he'd grown from that exhausted warehouse worker into a confident engineer and father. About how he still caught her when she stumbled, both literally and metaphorically. About how he loved her fiercely and completely, never letting a day go by without showing it. "Hey," Jake said, breaking into her thoughts. "What are you thinking about so seriously?" "Just about how lucky I am," Tessa said. "About how a random Tuesday at the grocery store changed my entire life." "Our entire lives," Jake corrected. "Me and Mia were just existing before you, going through the motions. You brought us back to life." "You did the same for me," Tessa said. "I was so focused on work, on proving myself, on meeting everyone's expectations. I forgot how to actually live. You reminded me." Marcus came running over, his little face flushed with excitement. "Mommy, Daddy, watch me. I can pump my legs now." They watched their son swing, cheering him on while Emily demanded, "Up, up," until Jake scooped her into his arms. Mia came over, sweaty and happy, collapsing onto the porch swing. "I have so much homework," she groaned dramatically. "Why do they assign so much homework in 9th grade?" "Because they're preparing you for college," Tessa said. "Speaking of which, have you thought more about that summer veterinary program?" Mia's face lit up. "Yes, I really want to do it. It's expensive, though." "Don't worry about the cost," Jake said. "We've got a college fund." "This counts as educational." "Thanks, Dad." "Thanks, Mom." Mia said it so naturally, both titles, and Tessa felt the familiar warmth in her chest. She'd never replaced Sarah, never wanted to, but she'd carved out her own space in Mia's heart. That was more than enough. That night, after the kids were all in bed, Jake and Tessa finally had a moment alone. They lay in bed, exhausted but content, talking about nothing and everything. "We should take a vacation," Jake said. "A real one. Maybe rent a beach house for a week this summer." "That sounds perfect," Tessa said. "Marcus would love the ocean. Emily would probably try to eat sand." Jake laughed. "Definitely. She puts everything in her mouth." "Just like her father," Tessa teased. "Hey now," Jake protested, tickling her side until she squealed. They settled down, curled together in the darkness. Tessa thought about how this was her favorite time of day, these quiet moments with Jake after the chaos had settled. They'd been married for 7 years now, together for 9, and she still got butterflies when he kissed her. "I love you," she said into the darkness. "I love you too," Jake replied immediately. "Forever and always." "Forever and always," Tessa echoed. The years continued to unfold with their mixture of joy and challenge. Mia got into her dream veterinary program, eventually heading off to college with tears and excitement. Marcus started kindergarten, showing an early aptitude for math and building things. Emily proved to be as strong-willed as she was sweet, keeping them all on their toes. Jake's engineering career flourished. He became a partner at his firm, specializing in sustainable design. Tessa's company continued to grow, expanding into new markets while maintaining the employee-focused culture she'd built. They were both successful, both fulfilled, both constantly juggling work and family and life, but through it all, they had each other. When Jake's father got sick, Tessa held him through the grief. When Tessa faced a hostile takeover attempt, Jake helped her strategize and reminded her of her strength. They parented together, made decisions together, built a life that honored both of their dreams and values. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Jake took Tessa back to that grocery store parking lot. It was late evening, the store closed, but they stood there under the streetlights where it had all begun. 10 years ago, give or take, Jake said, I caught a runaway shopping cart. And caught me in the process, Tessa added. Best decision I ever made, Jake said. He pulled out a small box and Tessa's eyes widened. Jake, we're already married. I know, but I wanted to give you a proper ring. The one I gave you when I proposed was all I could afford then. This, he opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring, is what I wanted to give you all along. Tessa looked at the ring, beautiful and expensive, clearly chosen with thought and care. Then she looked at her left hand, at the simple silver band with its modest diamond that she'd worn for 10 years. I don't want a new ring, she said softly. Jake looked surprised, maybe a little hurt. You don't. This ring, Tessa touched her original band, represents everything we are. You gave it to me when you were still finding your footing, when you were scared but hopeful, when you chose to love me despite all the complications. It's not about the diamond's size. It's about what it means. But I wanted to give you something worthy of you, Jake said. You give me everything worthy of me every single day, Tessa said. Your love, your partnership, your belief in me, that's worth more than any ring could ever be. Jake closed the box, emotion thick in his voice. You're incredible, you know that. I learned from the best, Tessa said, kissing him. From a man who jumped in front of a shopping cart to help a stranger, a man who puts family first always, a man who taught me what real strength looks like. They stood there in that parking lot, holding each other, honoring the journey that had brought them here. So much had changed since that first day. Jake was no longer the exhausted single dad struggling to make ends meet. Tessa was no longer the isolated CEO who'd forgotten how to connect with people. They'd grown together, supporting each other's evolution, but some things hadn't changed. Jake still had that same warm smile, that same protective instinct, that same genuine kindness. Tessa still got butterflies when she saw him, still felt safe in his arms, still chose him every single day. Let's go home, Tessa said finally. The kids are probably driving the babysitter crazy. Our kids, Jake asked innocently. Never. They drove home together, hands linked across the center console, talking about their plans for the anniversary dinner they had scheduled for the following week. When they got home, Mia was on the couch with Marcus and Emily, all three watching a movie, the babysitter looking remarkably calm. They were perfect, the teenager reported. Emily only asked for water 3 times instead of the usual 10. After paying the sitter and tucking the little ones into bed, they found Mia in her room, packing for college. You're leaving in 2 weeks, Jake said. Isn't it a little early to pack? I want to be prepared, Mia said, but Tessa could hear the nervousness underneath her words. Come here, Tessa said, sitting on the bed and patting the space beside her. Mia sat, and Jake joined them, the 3 of them squeezed together like they'd done so many times over the years. I'm scared, Mia admitted. What if I'm not ready? What if I fail? You won't fail, Jake said firmly. You're smart, capable, and you work harder than anyone I know. You're going to be amazing. And if you struggle, we're here, Tessa added. Always, that's what family means. Mia leaned her head on Tessa's shoulder. I'm glad Dad found you. I'm glad you became my mom. I'm glad too, Tessa said, her voice thick. Being your mom has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. When Mia's move-in day arrived, they all drove up together, the car packed with boxes and bags and last-minute items Mia insisted she needed. Jake was quiet on the drive, clearly struggling with his little girl leaving home. Tessa held his hand, offering silent support. Setting up the dorm room was chaotic and emotional. Marcus and Emily helped by getting in the way, but their presence made everything lighter. Finally, it was time to say goodbye. Jake hugged Mia for a long time, whispering things that made her cry. Then Mia turned to Tessa. Thank you, she said, for everything, for loving us, for giving me siblings, for being exactly what we needed. You're what I needed, Tessa said, hugging her tight. You taught me how to be a mother. I love you so much. Love you too, Mom. Driving home was harder. The car felt too quiet without Mia's chatter. Emily kept asking where her sister went. Marcus was subdued. Jake stared out the window, lost in thought. That night, after the little ones were asleep, Tessa found Jake in Mia's room, sitting on her bed, looking at photos on the wall. She's going to be fine, Tessa said gently. I know, Jake said. It's just weird. I've been her dad for 18 years. That's been my primary identity for so long. Who am I now? You're still her dad. That doesn't change just because she's at college. Tessa sat beside him. And you're Marcus and Emily's dad, and my husband, and a talented engineer, and a good friend. You're so many things, Jake. When Sarah died, I had to put everything else aside to focus on Mia, and I don't regret that at all. But now I'm looking around, wondering what's next. What do I want beyond being a dad? That's a good question, Tessa said. What do you want? Jake thought about it. I want to start my own engineering firm, something focused on sustainable, affordable housing. I've been thinking about it for a while, but never felt like I could take the risk. Why not? Tessa asked. Because it might fail, because we have kids depending on us, because my salary is important to our family. We're financially stable, Tessa pointed out. And I believe in you. If you want to start your own firm, you should do it. I'll support you completely. Jake turned to look at her, hope and fear mixing in his expression. Really? Really? You've supported every dream I've had. Let me support yours. 6 months later, Garrison Engineering opened its doors. Jake had 2 partners, engineers he'd worked with at his previous firm, and a handful of clients who believed in their mission. It was scary and exhilarating, and Jake threw himself into it with passion that Tessa hadn't seen in years. The firm grew steadily. They landed a major contract to design affordable housing for a nonprofit, then another project, and another. Within 2 years, they were profitable and growing. Jake was fulfilled in a way that made him light up when he talked about work. Tessa watched him flourish and felt profound pride. This was the man she'd seen potential in from the very beginning, even when he was exhausted and struggling. He'd always had this brilliance in him. He just needed space and support to let it emerge. Their life settled into a new rhythm. Mia thrived at college, coming home for holidays with stories about her classes and her friends and the veterinary clinic where she volunteered. Marcus excelled in elementary school, joining robotics club and building elaborate structures in the garage workshop Jake had set up. Emily was fearless and funny, keeping everyone laughing with her observations about the world. On what would have been their 15th wedding anniversary, Jake woke Tessa up early. Come on, he said. I have a surprise. It's 6 in the morning, Tessa groaned. On a Saturday. This better be good. Jake just smiled mysteriously and handed her coffee. They drove across town, Marcus and Emily still asleep in the back seat, until Jake pulled up to a large building with a "For Sale" sign out front. What's this? Tessa asked. A warehouse that's being converted into loft apartments, Jake said. My firm is overseeing the renovation, but that's not why we're here. He walked around to the side of the building, where a small park sat empty and neglected. The developer wants to put in a community space. I suggested a park with a playground and picnic areas. They agreed, and I want to name it Sarah's Garden. Tessa felt tears prick her eyes. After your wife. After Mia's mother, Jake corrected. She always wanted to do landscape design as a hobby. She loved gardens. I thought it would be a nice way to honor her memory while creating something beautiful for the community. That's perfect, Tessa said softly. She'd love it. I wanted to ask you first, Jake said. Make sure you were okay with it. Tessa looked at this man she loved, still honoring his first wife while building a life with his second, and felt overwhelming love. Of course I'm okay with it. Sarah is part of our family's story. She always will be. Jake hugged her tight. Thank you for understanding. For never making me choose between past and present. There's no choice to make, Tessa said. Love doesn't work that way. Sarah's Garden opened a year later, a beautiful space with flowering trees and benches and a playground where Emily immediately claimed the slide as her personal domain. There was a plaque acknowledging Sarah's love of nature and her legacy living on through Mia. Mia came home for the dedication, crying happy tears as she walked through the space. Mom would have loved this, she told Jake. Then she turned to Tessa. And you would have loved her. You're actually kind of similar in a lot of ways. Yeah, Tessa asked. Yeah, you both see the best in people. You're both strong but gentle. You both love hard. Mia smiled. I'm lucky I got to have both of you as my moms. As the years continued to pass, Tessa sometimes reflected on how her life had turned out so differently than she'd planned. She'd expected to follow in her father's footsteps, to be married to her career, to measure success in quarterly earnings and market share. Instead, success looked like Saturday morning soccer games and school plays. It looked like Jake's engineering firm designing its 100th affordable housing unit. It looked like Mia graduating veterinary school and Marcus winning the regional science fair and Emily's first dance recital where she waved at them through the entire performance instead of actually dancing. When Marcus was 12 and Emily was 10, Tessa made a decision. She stepped down as CEO of Harper Technologies, transitioning to chairman of the board. She wanted more time with her family, wanted to be present for these crucial years before her younger kids were grown. Her parents, predictably, were horrified. They called it irresponsible, a waste of her potential. But Tessa didn't care. She'd spent too many years trying to earn their approval, trying to prove she was enough. She knew her worth now, and it wasn't measured in profit margins. Jake understood completely. Life's too short, he said simply. Spend it on what matters. Tessa became more involved in charity work, focusing on education initiatives and programs that helped single parents further their education. She drew from Jake's experience, understanding firsthand how hard it was to balance parenting and professional development. The work was fulfilling in ways that corporate leadership had never been. One evening, when Marcus was 14 and Emily was 12, they had a rare night with just the two of them at home. Mia was working at a veterinary clinic in another state. The younger kids were at a sleepover. Jake and Tessa made dinner together, drank wine, and talked about everything and nothing. Do you ever miss it? Jake asked. Being CEO, running a major company? Sometimes, Tessa admitted. I miss the challenge, the problem solving. But I don't miss the stress or the politics or the time away from you guys. I made the right choice. You could go back, if you wanted to. The kids are older now. Maybe, Tessa said, but I'm happy with where I am, aren't you? Incredibly happy, Jake confirmed. Sometimes I can't believe this is my life. The business is successful, the kids are thriving, I'm married to my best friend. It's more than I ever dreamed possible. We've come a long way from that parking lot, Tessa said with a smile. We really have. Jake reached across the table and took her hand. Thank you for taking a chance on me. I know I wasn't the obvious choice. You were the only choice, Tessa said firmly. From the moment I saw you sprint across that parking lot to save my shopping cart, something in me just knew. You were the one. Even though I was broke and exhausted and came with a kid, especially because of all that, it showed your character, your priorities, who you really were. Jake stood and pulled her to her feet, wrapping his arms around her waist. They slow danced in the kitchen to no music, just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of their breathing. "I'd choose you again," Jake murmured against her hair. "Every time in every lifetime, you're it for me, Tessa." "And you're it for me," Tessa said. As they swayed together in their kitchen, Tessa thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The shopping cart that had rolled away, Jake's heroic catch, the shy conversation in the grocery aisle, the first soccer game, the first kiss. Every choice that had led them here, to this life they'd built together. It wasn't always perfect. They still argued sometimes about finances and schedules and parenting decisions. They still struggled with balancing work and family and personal needs. They still had hard days when everything felt overwhelming, but they had each other. They had their kids. They had a partnership built on respect and trust and genuine love. They had a home filled with laughter and warmth and belonging. When Mia got married a few years later to a kind veterinarian she'd met in graduate school, both Jake and Tessa walked her down the aisle. Mia had insisted, saying she had two parents who'd raised her and both deserved the honor. Tessa cried through the entire ceremony, overcome with emotion at watching the little girl who'd once talked enthusiastically about cereal brands transform into a confident, successful woman. "We did good," Jake whispered, squeezing Tessa's hand as they watched Mia and her new husband dance. "We really did," Tessa agreed. Marcus went off to college a year later, choosing engineering like his father. Emily followed 3 years after that, pursuing environmental science. The house felt empty with just the two of them, echoing with memories of fuller, louder times. But it was also peaceful. Jake and Tessa rediscovered each other without the constant demands of active parenting. They traveled, taking trips they'd always talked about but never had time for. They slept in on weekends. They had spontaneous date nights. They remembered what had drawn them together in the first place. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Jake took Tessa back once more to that grocery store parking lot. It had become a tradition, marking significant milestones at the place where it all began. 25 years, Jake said, shaking his head in wonder. A quarter century. We've raised 3 kids, built careers, created a whole life together. And I'd do it all again, Tessa said. Every moment, every challenge, every joy, all of it. Even the terrible twos, all 3 times. "Even the terrible twos," Tessa confirmed, laughing. Jake pulled her close, and they stood there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Other shoppers passed by, oblivious to the significance of this ordinary parking lot to these 2 people. "I love you, Tessa Garrison," Jake said. "Thank you for seeing me all those years ago. Thank you for taking a chance on a struggling single dad who was just trying to keep his head above water." "I love you, Jake Garrison," Tessa replied. "Thank you for being brave enough to catch that shopping cart and then brave enough to let me into your life. You're the best decision I ever made." They kissed in that parking lot where it had all begun, 26 years after a shopping cart had rolled away. Because sometimes love starts in the most unexpected places. Sometimes it comes from the most unlikely circumstances. Sometimes all it takes is one person being brave enough to reach out and another person being open enough to let them in. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that moment of connection becomes a lifetime of love, partnership, and family. It becomes 3 children and 2 careers and countless memories. It becomes a home built not on money or status, but on mutual respect and unwavering support. It becomes everything. As they drove home together, hands linked across the center console like they'd been for over 2 decades, Tessa looked at Jake's profile and smiled. He'd caught her runaway shopping cart all those years ago, but in truth, she'd caught him right back. They'd saved each other, loved each other, built something beautiful together, and they were going to keep doing exactly that for as long as they both lived. Forever and always, just as they'd promised.